Hello and welcome to the Private Record. We got a banger for you today. Our guest has, well, I wouldn't say the coolest first name because he has my first name, but he has the coolest last name in all of history. His name is Matt Van Nuys. So obviously that sounds like a fake name. It sounds like a fake name someone made up to do porn. But he didn't make it up, nor did he make it up to do porn. He is just a guy. He's a regular dude, ordinary dude, but his story is, that's right, extraordinary. He, not even on purpose, ended up becoming a drug dealer for a major Mexican cartel. I honestly don't think I need to say more than that, so I'm not gonna. It's a crazy, crazy story. This is a submission I literally remember where I was and how I felt when I read it. I immediately sent a screenshot of it to my producer and was like, we got to get this guy on. We got to get this guy on ASAP. He's a real character. He's a very interesting guy, very good storyteller. And he's one of those guys that like you listen to him talk and you're just like, this dude has lived. He's got experience like on him. And where this story goes is very, very not just unexpected, but just it's fucking wild. So without further delay, if you want to be on the show, go to theprivaterecord.com, submit yourself as a guest. Can't wait to hear your story. Follow us on all socials at The Private Record. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. Go follow us. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Private Record. Like and comment. And yes, that's right. As I always say, share with your friends. Thank you so much. Enjoy this episode. Enjoy Matt Van Nuys. Enjoy the person with the coolest name in all of history. That sounds like he does porn. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however you're taking this one in. I appreciate you. Thank you. I love you. Enjoy. All right. Well, welcome to The Private Record. This is one, not that anybody knows what I'm talking about yet, but I think pretty soon people will understand why I say I'm very excited to speak with you today about you and your story. If you want to, or if you would be so kind to introduce yourself, and if you care to, give us like maybe the little headline of what your story is. If you
Sure.
if you could do the summed up version real quick, byline, and then we'll get into it.
The byline is I accidentally ended up working for the Zeta cartel. How's that for a byline?
That is as good as it gets. Perfect. I think that whets everyone's appetite well enough. So yeah, let's jump right in.
Okay. I was actually raised in the suburbs. I was born in Carmel, and then I was cruelly transplanted to Modesto when I was like 8 years old. But that's because my dad he was a college professor. He got a job at a college there. You know, they bought a sprawling home, a corner house. I went to private junior high, all that stuff when I was growing up. So I was really sheltered in that way. I started dabbling around with drugs, LSD, marijuana, things like that when I was in high school. Nothing really ever came of that. So when I was 27, I had moved away to the Bay Area to make it in music. I'm a musician. And my dad, I get a phone call one day saying that my dad is dying, that he has prostate cancer, and it's a very aggressive prostate cancer. So I'm 27, he's 54. My dad is my best friend. He was my best friend. He's the reason I named my 5-year-old son Peter. So I was taken aback. I was at a loss. I was at a cross point in my life. Music wasn't happening. I didn't really know what to do. And now I find myself having to move back from the Bay Area to Modesto to help take care of my dying father. It was 6 months from diagnosis to death with him.
Oh, wow. That is very aggressive. I'm sorry to hear that, man.
It was very, very fast. And I'm 54 now, so I trip out on that.
Yeah.
Died. When this happened, I end up walking into the living room. I spend the night at a friend's house one night. I end up walking into the living room of an acquaintance of ours who's smoking meth off of tinfoil. Now, I'd seen all my friends go through meth addictions when we were like 18, 19 years old. They all dabbled in it, quickly got out of it, went to rehab, swore off it, said they would never do it again.
Mm-hmm.
For me, this was wrong place, wrong time. I'd always said I would never touch that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But here I am in a vulnerable situation with losing my dad. I feel like this anchor of depression that I just can't escape.
Yeah.
So I make a silly decision at that point, and I use it. And it wasn't this boogeyman that I thought it was. All I knew was all of a sudden I'm having the most interesting conversation I've ever had in my entire life, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So fast forward, my dad dies. The people that I am scoring the dope from, I am like basically the only white guy amongst a bunch of Mexican dudes, right? And my value to them is that I'm well spoken. I can present well. So I sort of become a con man. I start doing identity theft. These are things I never thought I would ever do. And I'm so in my depression that I can't even really accurately assess what I'm doing, with a rational mind.
Sure.
Plus I'm on meth.
Yeah. So actually, I have a question about that. So you start using meth, and then how is it that you kind of slide into? Because I've known plenty of drug users in my life, and
Right.
that doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with also falling in with the very people who are dealing you those drugs.
For sure.
So how does that first little bridge happen for you?
So, first off, you have to know Modesto in a way.
Yeah. Okay.
Modesto's nickname is Meth Death Stowe.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And really what it was is that I didn't have any casual friends who did it. They weren't doing it anymore. The only people who were doing it, this guy that I saw in my living room, who later on felt terrible because he was one of these recreational meth users. He could really do it and put it down, which blew my mind.
Sure, yeah.
So he felt terrible about introducing it to me later. But the thing is, his cousin was a dealer. So I got in with him, and since I didn't have any friends, and since I became hooked really quickly, I mean, it was pretty fast. So I'd rather get right there where the source is.
Got it.
So I find myself doing this identity theft stuff. And eventually my dad dies, and I am just bottomed out. So now I doubled down on all of that. But consequences started to come knocking at my door. The cops started to come knocking at my door. So I realized I can't stick around here. And a part of me wanted to stop doing meth. So I say, I'm going to move with my mom, who had just moved after my dad died. She moved over to a northern coastal California town. And so I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to go move over there. So I do that. They call that a geographic in the recovery field, right?
Okay, yeah.
My problems are going to be solved if I just move over here, right?
Right.
It doesn't happen that way. So very quickly, the meth found me again. That said, I didn't want to commit crimes anymore. So I became what I would call a functional addict for many years. I found I was a caregiver. I was able to hold a job, and I held jobs for years and did that functionally. Problem is, when you're a functional addict, everything's okay. As long as everything's okay.
Yes.
But as soon as one thing goes off, everything starts to fall apart. So I ultimately lost my job. I drew unemployment for as long as I could. And at this point, my addiction, when things start going sideways, your addiction deepens, My addiction's getting stronger. Unemployment runs out. And so now I'm in a situation where I need money. I need to be able to pay rent.
Yeah.
That's when my dealer over here in this northern coastal town that I live in said, well, are you in luck? Have I got an offer for you? My boss needs somebody to be a courier for him to deliver to us dealers. What I didn't know at the time is that guy lived in Mexico and was a Zeta affiliated cartel member. And I had no idea about any of that at the time.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you didn't know that you didn't know that in any capacity whatsoever, you're being approached as a potential courier between dealers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And I thought, because the way pipelines usually work, there's a few steps between the Zeta guy and a regional pipeline, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
In this case, it just so happened to be one of the main stops on that particular pipeline's run through California. So the brother-in-law of this Zeta connected cartel member lived in,
Mm.
and so that's why it was so close to that source that it happened to be around here.
But at this point, just to be clear, at this point, when you're considering being a courier, you don't know that it is anything to do with the Zetas, right?
Nothing. I think it's purely local.
Got it.
I think this, and I've been in the drug game enough at that point in terms of being a customer and knowing, and where I lived happened to be an area where a lot of dealers would come and break up their stash. They trusted me. I was a trustworthy person in that way.
Okay.
So I was familiar with the local game, but I didn't realize how close this particular pipeline was. So
got it.
So I end up setting up a phone call with that guy. I'm desperate. I don't really want to do it. I've never wanted to deal or anything. I'm full of anxiety about it, but I need to pay rent and I need to use.
Yeah.
So I take a phone call with him, and I always refer to him as El Mano. and I take a phone call with him. And as far as Zeta Cartel Mafia connected people go, he was a really nice guy. I mean, he was reasonable. He was like, he wasn't a break your kneecaps kind of guy. He was like, rats get shot in the head.
Right.
But, I mean, that was, he was fairly well-spoken, reasonable guy. So he offered me a salary and a certain amount of dope per month.
Wow.
Which would pay my rent. And in exchange for that, I need to have a burner phone at all times and meet anybody anywhere. He'll tell me who I need to meet, give me their phone number, and I'll arrange with that person, where to meet and what to bring.
Wow.
And this was heavyweight heroin and meth.
Okay.
So I was delivering to dealers who then dealt, or distributors. I would also deliver to distributors who would then deliver to dealers.
So you're not then, just to clear up for anybody listening, you're not bringing individuals who want to use drugs the amount that they want in the small quantities that they wanted. You're dealing in massive amounts of these heavy duty drugs to the people that are actually really making the money, dealing the big amounts, distributing, as you put it.
That's right.
Distributors. Okay. Wow.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So if I'm making a drop, a deal, it is for an amount,
Right.
So, I didn't feel good about any of it. I really didn't feel good about heroin because I didn't do heroin. And I felt really bad about that. But I was living in my amygdala, man. I was in a fight or flight mode. So I went about doing that. And I did that for a couple of months. About 2.5 months or so, maybe almost 3. And during that time, I would get phone calls. I would meet people all over the place. I would, deliver sometimes heroin and meth to the same person. Sometimes it's heroin, sometimes it's meth. I wasn't great at it. I would lose product.
Wow.
And, this is why I say, as far as mafia guys go, he was okay, because when that would happen, he would just dock my pay and say, be more careful.
Wow. So in the one sense, you're really lucky that this is the guy they're dealing with. Because, I mean, let's back up for just a second so people who are listening understand, if they might not know who the Zetas are. I'll tell you what I understand about the Zetas, and you can fill in any blanks that I'm missing. The Zetas were an offshoot of the Gulf Cartel, which was a major player in Mexico in the 70s and 80s and to the 90s. But they were like the military, almost the enforcement arm of that cartel.
That's right.
And so they were known as really sort of vengeful, bloodthirsty, hardcore dudes. And then they branched off in the 90s and aughts to their own cartel. And there was a time, I don't know about now, but I know there was a time where the Zetas were like either the biggest or one of the very biggest cartels in all of the entire game. So you're dealing with, when we say the Zetas, that is specifically a cartel that I'm assuming, especially at the time period you're talking about, this is a huge operation, like
Very much so.
massive cartel operation. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, to the best of my understanding, although I'm not delved into this too much these days, but to the best of my understanding, they've become somewhat defunct. There's other cartels that are taking over now. At the time, I believe they were in a desperate fight to stay on top.
Yeah.
But of course, none of this, if I had known that that's what I was dealing with, I would have never gotten involved.
And so this is still out of your purview entirely.
This is still completely out of. I didn't find out any of this until the indictment.
Wow. Okay.
Right?
Wow. All right.
So, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself.
Sure. Yeah. It's okay.
So, unbeknownst to me, he was living in Mexico. He was a phone call. He lived in Mexico.
Got it.
And when I talked to him on the phone, I wasn't talking to somebody in my area or in California even. I was talking to Mexico, you know. So I did this for a few months. One time, a phone call came in. So I became one of two of his regional representatives in this small coastal town, tourist town. It's a coastal tourist town. Right? So it's not really small necessarily, but I mean, it's very bucolic, I guess you could say. It's the kind of place that has roller coasters and families coming to visit. So I was one of two of his sort of regional distributors. Okay. I would go pick up dope from his brother-in-law, deliver the money for a couple of months or for a couple of weeks, and then get a sizable amount of dope and then spend the next couple of weeks doling that out. I was one of two people doing that.
Wow.
The other guy, who we'll call Steve, he and I became friends, and we would oftentimes hang out at my house and divvy up the dope and all that. One night he gets a phone call from somebody who has a customer on the line. So we get a call from a dealer, a guy that we called Starbuck. And it could have been me that got that call, but it happened to Steve.
Okay.
Steve takes a softball's worth of meth down to him, meets him at a particular location. He takes that softball of meth and walks about a half block away to where he's going to meet the person that's buying it from him. He's going to get the money there under the observation of Steve, then bring the money back to him.
Okay.
Turns out that was a dope rip. That was a sketched out gangbanger who needed heroin and was trying to get meth to sell for it.
Oh, wow.
He shoots and kills Starbuck right in front of Steve.
Holy shit. Okay.
So Steve was never the same after that. And that could have been me who got that.
Yeah.
So these are the kinds of things that we're doing that I was not raised for. I wasn't prepared for this kind of stuff. I'm in over my head. I realize that at this point, but I feel like there's nothing I can really do about it.
Sure. So yeah, I guess my question about that is, I'm sure you have a sense of what is your sense of if I want to get out of it? Like how much are you like, I can't get out of this even if I want to? Or are you thinking if I really wanted to, I could? Like, where's your head at about that at this time?
You know, that was the first incident that made it real. Before that, it was all suspended disbelief in a lot of ways, right?
Sure, yeah. Just not really allowing in thoughts that might disturb you about what you're doing, yeah.
Exactly. And so when that happened, the thought started to pick up about wanting to get out, but at the same time, I felt trapped, not so much by, El Mano, but by my circumstances, because I had a partner, the same gal who's been with me ever since. God bless her. I don't know why. What a woman. I had a partner, a dog. I was like, I didn't know what else to do, so it was kind of like, for those reasons, I felt trapped in it.
Got it.
So, all right. So things proceed. And then one day I go to one of the dope houses where I would pick up. And, I always was careful about my routes. I was always very careful about where I kept the dope at my house. I was always very careful about, how I delivered it, how I traveled. Little did I know that none of that mattered, because the way indictments come down is not because they accidentally catch you with some dope on you, as somebody told way up the chain, right?
Yeah.
So I go and I pick up a bunch of dope. I mean, a bunch of meth and a bunch of heroin. And I want to get out of there. I don't want to stay at that house when that happens, right? So I pick it up, I bail out of there. I go through a circuitous route, this kind of a woodsy route to this park that I know of, where I plan to take that dope, which is currently just in my pocket, and I plan to nut it, right? I plan to put it in my pants, right?
Okay.
Okay. I get to that park, and out of nowhere, 2 cop cars just descend on me. They just
Wow.
jump in on me. They immediately search me. They immediately find it because I haven't even had a chance to do anything with it.
Ugh.
Take me to jail. I'm there for 3 days. I figure my life is over. I go in front of the judge. I say, I'm getting ready to, for this long process. Lo and behold, the DA says, Your Honor, we move to dismiss all these charges. And my public attorney says, sounds great. The judge slams the gavel, and I go, when are we getting to me? Because surely you're not talking about me, right?
Right. Yeah.
Had it right on me. I try to get a hold of my attorney for several days to find out what happened here.
So you walked, like at that time, they just say
Yes.
bye. Go. What the fuck?
Walked right out the door. Right.
Yeah. Right.
I try to get a hold of my attorney and say, like, what's going on? Why am I not in handcuffs right now?
Sure. Yeah.
He's a public defender. He has 100 other clients. He basically says, get away, kid. You bother me. You were lucky.
Yeah. What are you complaining about? You're not in jail. Shut up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, So I sort of take that as my sort of second chance from God, as it were. Right.
Yeah.
So at that point I go, you know what? Screw this. I'm just taking the hit. I call my mom. She's willing to let us move back in with her. I call El Mano. I resign. He's totally copacetic about it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
This is so counter to I mean, it doesn't surprise me that it's the case, but everything everybody sees in TV shows or movies, it's like, once you're in, good luck getting out, know, but well, I'm sure it's like that in some cases, but it can't be, obviously, in all cases, it wasn't for you.
For sure. And make no mistake, I wasn't a gang member. You know what I mean? I wasn't, I hadn't taken any oaths or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
If I'd lived in Mexico, it would have been a very different story. Right.
Right. Also, you know enough, but you don't know, and he knows what you know. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it does to a degree make sense. They can't just fucking kill everybody. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah.
And what I didn't realize, and I think one of the reasons he was so treaded so lightly at that time, what I didn't realize is that his operation was crumbling in this area. And I think he already knew that something was going on, and I don't think he wanted to make any further ripples. I think he wanted to placate me to be like, okay, that's cool. You go ahead and go.
Yeah. Right. Right. Okay. Yeah.
So, so great. So I spend the next year of my life getting my life together. I get a job eventually. Finally, took me like 9 months to find one, but I got one. I'm getting ready to move back out. And I'm using again, but again, I'm using and working, right? So there's always this desire to be this functional addict that I would be able to be for short periods of time, at least, or even long periods of time.
Yeah.
So
did you ever, I'm sorry, but was there a period where you stopped using at all, or did it just go kind of wane and wax, but you never really stopped?
I had stopped briefly when I moved to.
Okay.
And then I did stop at this point as well for about 6 months when I moved back to my mom.
Okay.
Because I just couldn't afford it. I had no money. I had no way to get it. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So it started up again. But I was keeping it mellow. I was going to work, had a good job. One day I get a call while I'm at work from my mom, who informs me that my house is surrounded by the DEA, the FBI, and a SWAT team.
Oh, man. You just knew. You knew it was a matter of time before they were coming right back and knocking on your door. Yeah.
But I had told myself that, because again, I was a professional at denial.
Yeah, right.
So I had sort of told myself like everything was okay. I got out of that one. It took me a while to even think about what this could be about.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Right. So I spent 3 days on the run.
Whoa.
With a DEA guy calling me on my phone repeatedly, trying to get me to turn myself in, but not telling me what the indictment is.
Interesting. You must have been scared out of your fucking
Terrified,
mind.
terrified, terrified that you won't even tell me what this is about.
Yeah, that's the
I
weird
find
thing.
out.
Like, why wouldn't they? I guess I'm sure they have their reasons, but that almost to me makes it less likely that you would turn yourself in. Like,
I mean, I keep saying, just
yeah,
tell me what this is about.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What I later find out is that federal indictments are sealed. It's a
Oh,
sealed
right.
indictment. So but I didn't realize that at first. So
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
I take that 3 days. I go and secure, thank God to my mom again, private representation from an
Okay.
attorney that specializes in this kind of stuff.
Okay.
I get home on a Sunday night after 3 days on the run. I'm starting to think, well, maybe this was just about nothing.
Wow, you're good at working it out in your mind that
Oh
like
yeah,
to your benefit. Yeah, but
for sure.
yeah, it's a skill. Honestly, that's
It
it's
is. It's
impressive.
actually,
Yeah,
it served me well. I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure. Yeah.
That's when I get a call about 10 o'clock at night from my attorney saying, this is a federal indictment. It's a federal RICO indictment. There's no way out of this. This is a 54 count, 24 co-defendant federal RICO indictment. And you need to turn yourself in the morning.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Wow.
So,
Wow. Okay.
yeah,
And I'm sorry. By this point, how long has it been since you left all of it behind, like, and moved back in with your mom?
about a
Okay.
year or so.
Okay. So a long
Yeah,
time. Okay.
yeah, whole year. So my world bottoms out. It's hard to even, like, when I talk about this in depth, when I get to this part, it's really difficult,
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Um, so I lay there in bed with my partner, thinking that I'm going to lose it all. I'm going to lose
Yeah.
her. I'm going to lose my dog, who's sitting right over here. He's my best friend in the world.
Aw.
And at 5:15 a.m. on December 15th of 2011, I did the last 2 lines of meth that I ever did.
Wow.
So I was getting ready to turn myself in a few hours to the feds. And so in the morning, I go over, my attorney comes, picks me up, takes me down to the police station where a couple of DEA agents are waiting to take me over to a bigger city where, I will be officially charged and held and all that.
Mm-hmm.
While I'm on my way, and these are a couple of DEA yahoos. One's clearly fresh off of an undercover operation. He's got long hair and wearing flip flops. These are cowboys,
Wow.
And they like to make jokes. And one of the jokes that they made with me on the way over the hill there was, hey, it's kind of funny how they dropped all those charges against you a year ago, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out because there were superseding
Yeah.
federal charges,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so again, God bless my mom. I get over there. I'm there for a few days, thinking my life is gone. My mom, I get in front of the judge. My mom shows up. She puts her house up for me. God bless her.
Wow.
Allows me out on bail, which is very rare for federal cases.
Right. Okay.
So I'm one of only 3 people who got out on bail from this 24.
I wonder why they accommodated that for you 3. I mean, do you know, or is it just they
I
thought
don't know
you
about
guys
the other
wouldn't run?
2,
Uh-huh.
but I'm pretty sure I know why they did that for me, and I'll tell you in a minute.
Okay.
So I find out that I have procured 2 heavyweight charges, which each carry a heavyweight heroin charge, heavyweight meth charge, each of which carry a 10 to life's mandatory minimum sentence.
Oof.
But then I also have 1 lightweight charge, which the feds are draconian. So even for a small amount of meth, the charge with intent to distribute, it's still 5 to life.
Damn. So you're looking at 25 years minimum, if
right,
at face value.
at face value, if not more.
Right. Yeah. Minimum. Yeah. Wow.
So I go about being on pretrial. I'm trying to get my head together. I realize I'm smart enough not to mess around anymore. I'm done with meth, and I know that. I don't want to be done with meth, but I know that at the time. Later on, I become very grateful for that, but at the time, I'm not. I'm lucky that I run into a group of men who, to this day, are my backbone. They're my brothers, my fathers. They took me in. It's a men's organization that I'm a member of. It's about integrity.
Mm.
We have a code of honor, and they taught me how to be a man for the first time.
Hmm.
You know? And those men supported me through all of this. And I was on pretrial for 3.5 years, every 6 months coming up for sentencing.
Whoa.
Every 6 months getting deferred, right?
Oh my God. How how dreadful.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Best thing that ever happened to me. Best
Yeah.
thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to learn how to stay in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
you don't come up for sentencing every 6 months, potentially losing everything, and then have that put out another 6 months. You don't get through that unless you learn how to be here now, you know?
Mm. Wow.
And
Yeah. That's powerful. That's
that
interesting. Yeah.
taught me that lesson, you know? So eventually the feds come to me. And this is when I find out why they let me out on pretrial. And this is when I find out why that small weight charge. They offer me a deal. But guess
Mm.
what? In exchange for that deal, I have to testify, right?
Wow. Yeah. Of course. I mean, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. So they offer me a deal on the 10 to life, the 2 10 to life charges. If I come in and I do I forget there's a name for this kind of meeting, a proffer. I'll do a proffer with them, meeting with them, tell them everything I know. And then they will use that to get those people to roll. And I might have to testify.
Mm-hmm.
If I do that, they will dismiss both the 10 to life charges and just keep the 5 to life charge. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I do it. What else am I going to do?
I mean, yeah, that's like it's fucking awful still, obviously, but it's a no-brainer because you don't have to spend the rest of your life in jail.
And if I was somebody who'd grown up in that life, who was like hard in the yard like that, maybe that would be a different story.
Right.
It's not
Right.
me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
No. So then I realized that there's still this 5 to life.
Yeah.
And they say, tell you what, if you want to, what we can do with this 5 to life charge is, if you will agree to help your local law enforcement do undercover buys and stings against local dealers, then what we will do is we will invoke the 5.1K clause, 5.1K clause, I believe is what they call it. And that is a clause where they open up the mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines. This is a reaction that Congress put into place eventually, because when Reagan came along and all these draconian sentences were going to happen, they realized sometimes people fall through the cracks with that.
Yeah.
So Congress created the 5.1K clause, which if both parties agree to that, it opens up the sentencing guidelines so you can get lesser time than 5 to life.
Okay.
So I do that.
Mm-hmm.
That starts my prolific 2-year undercover work.
And how does that work? Like, obviously, this is in large part something you're very experienced with. You're doing something you've spent much time doing, but now you're doing it. Are you wearing a wire? Are you?
Oh, yeah, man.
Wow.
It was, to me, it was crazy. First off, again, you were talking about how different it is, how different things can be from what you see on TV, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
I'd always had this sort of conception of, your handler and things like that as being these dicks.
Right,
Get back out there, you punk.
Yeah.
My handler was a cool dude, man. He was a nice guy. I don't know why he does what he does for a living. I don't agree with it, but whatever.
Sure, yeah.
He treated me nicely. He treated me with respect, which was really important, But what I had to do was I had a key fob, which was actually a fisheye digital 4K digital recording device. So that recorded video. So my key fob actually recorded video. So I had that in my hand, surreptitiously recording video.
Wow.
And my cell phone is actually a mic. I mean, it's a cell phone too, but it's also a mic, and it's going directly to a team of operatives who at all times surround me in unmarked cars. They take turns like parking here and zigzagging and swapping out. And I go around town and I do what I'm good at doing, buying drugs.
Yeah.
So
so wait, I'm sorry. You're going around with this surveillance on you, and you're
Yes.
buying drug in the same kinds of large quantities as you were before, or
No,
just
no,
as like a regular user going to people who sell drugs to individuals
exactly.
to get those individuals obviously recorded doing what they're doing so that
Exactly.
you can collect all these people and prove what they do for the police
This
or
is to
feds, I
start,
guess. Yeah.
yeah, this is to start whatever investigations they want to start, which will probably turn into indictments like the one I was a part of.
Right. A
Right?
whole new one, but
Whole new
now
one.
they're using you from the previous one. Because I would imagine because you were so outside of the Zetas as a person, as a man in the world,
Yeah.
there's no reason why they care really about putting you in jail because you're just a
Right.
guy to them
That's in
that
a
got
lot of
caught
ways
up
correct.
with this shit, and they don't want to punish you. Punishing you isn't going to send a message to anybody
No.
besides people who are already scared as shit of people like the Zetas. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that is a really interesting, like you can totally see the logic of the
For sure.
feds in doing this with you, why you're
And they
more
knew,
valuable to them in this way.
absolutely. And they knew they had an easy person to roll with me.
Right.
And once they can tell somebody else in that indictment, hey, so and so's already rolled. What about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
they're going to
Yeah.
want to get in on that deal too, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And then as far as this goes, they knew they'd been observing me. What I didn't realize with that Zeta indictment is that I walked in and I waltzed in during the last 2 months of their indictment, of their
Right.
operation. Just said, I want a piece of that on my way,
Wow.
And so they had been observing me for a minute. They knew I was good at, interacting with people. So I was very good at getting people to sell me drugs. And I went around this coastal town and had people do that. I went in, I think about 3 rounds over 2 years, where I would do an intensive number of undercover operations. Then I'd pull back. Then they'd come in and they'd arrest all those people, and then I had to testify in open court against those people,
The new people.
the new people.
Oh my God. You're living in the courtroom now.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sitting there in front of two. I sat in front of two separate juries, testifying in front of about people, and I hated myself for it for a long
Yeah.
time. I didn't like it. I didn't want to be a snitch.
Yeah.
I wish that I'd been stronger, harder, more able to like live up to this thing. What I've come to realize since then is that whole world's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at these top mafia bosses who roll in New York City. I mean, it's
Yeah.
all a game.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I get why you would think that, feel that way while you're doing it. But
Yeah,
in all honesty, you know what? It's just like what everybody else was thinking about you about in the way of like why punish you. It's like it's and from your perspective, it's gonna be somebody who they get to do what you're doing.
sure.
They're gonna get somebody,
That's
and
right.
if somebody's gonna get that lucky or whatever word you want to use,
That's
fucking why
right.
not? Why not you? You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. At the same time, the men's organization I'm a member of is very much about integrity.
Mm,
And I feel out of integrity doing this. So as
yeah.
I go through this experience, I did 3 rounds over 2 years. But about a year into that, I start going back to college
Mm,
to become a drug and alcohol counselor. Now, at first, I do that just to show the judge. It's a bit of a con job in a way. I'm doing not really a con job, but kind of halfway a con job. I don't know that I actually plan to become a drug and alcohol counselor, but I want
okay.
to be able to go in and show the judge, look at how into recovery I am. Look at this. You don't want to send me to prison, right?
Right, right, right. Yeah, you're a happy ending story that is potentially there's like a narrative there, and for
Right.
in a judge's eyes, it would make
Exactly.
sense why that would be viable. A good idea for you. Yeah.
Exactly. But a funny thing happened about 18 months in. I started doing music.
Uh-huh.
Again, I'm a singer, I'm a songwriter. I started performing jazz, vocal jazz, which I'd never thought I could do. My brain started to heal. I took
Hmm.
pharmacology. I started to understand my own brain and what had been going on. My
Hmm.
relationships were getting better. So this thing that was a con job became real to me.
Yeah.
So, and around that time, I'm spending half of my days going to school and half of my days doing undercover work. So I will like go and get myself looking like a drug addict in the
Wow.
morning, go out and do some drug deals, and then get myself cleaned up and go to school.
Whoa.
And it feels psychotic.
Yeah, I would imagine. It's like two actually different versions of the same person living in one body. How long did you have to do these undercover busts with people or
Well,
undercover runs?
it was open-ended. There wasn't
Ah,
an end date. But what happened was that during this time when I'm feeling this way, I go on one particular undercover deal, and I have this guy, and we get out of pocket. And what I mean by out of pocket is that we get out of that caravan of circling, cops and stuff. And they gave me a sentence to say if I was ever in trouble.
okay.
If I was ever in trouble, I was supposed to say, "I sure wish my brothers were here."
Ah,
And if they ever heard me say, "Sure wish my brothers were here," they knew to descend in mass because something was going on, right?
okay. Yeah.
I'm out of pocket. I can't do that. They don't know where I am. They still hear me.
Oh,
They don't know where I am.
fuck. So nobody even knows where you are. It's not
Nobody
that
knows
you're
where I
out of
am.
that. Nobody's tailing you. Everyone, you're lost.
That's right. I'm lost. I'm in some backwoods areas, right, where
Oh, God.
encampments are. And this guy that is, he's waiting for his dude to get to him, and he turns to me and crystal clear, looks me dead in the eye and says, "If you're a cop, I'll fucking kill you."
Oh my God. Well, you're
Okay,
not a cop, so
I'm
you
not a
kind of
cop.
on a technicality, you got out of that one. Yeah.
I mean, I immediately almost shit my
I mean,
pants.
I can't even imagine how fucking scary that would be.
So here I am out of pocket with this guy saying this to me somehow, because by that denial skill,
Yeah.
I managed to float that. I managed to get over that. What a fucking cop! How dare you? I'm not going
Right.
to bring
Right.
it back, right?
Yeah.
And he ends up selling me the dope.
Wow.
But I take it to my men's team that night, and they help me realize I need to resign. So I'm so nervous. I go to this handler. I'm so worried that he's going to be like, because my future's in his hands in a lot of ways. He's not going to let me resign.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And he was like, "Dude, I get it. I understand. No worries. You've done plenty for us. I'll write you a letter." You know.
Wow.
So he lets me out of that. So I go to sentencing. Eventually, I get sentenced. I ultimately get sentenced to do 14 months at Lompoc Federal Prison. I end up doing most of that there. Actually, I got sentenced to 2 years. I do 14 months at Lompoc. I do several more months at a halfway house.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, which was worse than the prison.
Wow. Really?
Oh yeah, it was a clusterfuck in there. But in any case, I got through Lompoc safely. Thankfully, I went in already 3.5 years clean. Since then, I came back out. I got the rest of my education done. I've been an intensive outpatient drug and alcohol counselor now for the last 8 years of my life.
Wow.
And 5 years ago, something happened to me that I never thought could happen to me, which is I have my first and only son. I have a 5-year-old little boy.
Oh, wow, man.
Is
Congratulations.
Thank
Good
you.
for
I'd love to send
you.
you a picture of him if you want to.
Yeah, you got our email. Send it over. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and he is the light and love of my life. I ended up getting into jazz music pretty deeply. I won the 2017 Reno Jazz Festival with my jazz group.
Whoa.
Jazz
What's the
group.
name of your jazz group?
Well, I'm not in it anymore. It was a collegiate jazz group.
Ah, okay.
It was at the college where I went to, which I won't
Nice.
say their name.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But yeah, we won the 2017 Jazz Festival. I still have my old dog.
Old
So,
dogs are the best. Yeah.
this life that I was living, I thought that I loved it, but what I came to realize that I was surviving, but I wasn't thriving.
Mm-hmm.
And the best thing that ever happened to me in my life was that federal indictment and everything that came from that, because it changed my life in all the best ways.
I mean, it's a genuinely wild, truly wild story. And even among stories similar to or in the realm of yours stands out because, again, you were not brought up in the life of this. You kind of honestly fell backwards into it,
Absolutely.
and didn't even realize what you were getting into at the beginning
Not at all.
either. It's very, very, very interesting. I do have a question about your handler.
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but couldn't your handler have said, fuck you, you're not going anywhere. I own you and you're going to do this for as long as I want you to do it for?
Absolutely. That's why I was so scared to ask him. I
Yeah.
really had to get a lot of support from the men around me to advocate for myself. And I was really worried that that's because, I mean, he knew where my situation, he didn't have to write me a letter. But
Mm-hmm.
what I did find out later, because even the US attorney, when I was finally sentenced and I stood in front of the federal judge, the US attorney actually went against what his boss had recommended to him in terms of time, gave me lower time or advocated for lower time, advocated for 2 years. One of the reasons for that was that I came to find out that I was one of the most prolific and successful undercover operatives for the local police department that they'd ever had.
Oh, wow.
So I managed to get, unfortunately, in my perspective, you know,
Sure.
a
Sure.
lot of people caught up in that.
Yeah. I
Reasons
mean,
I do what I do is to make up for all the damage I've done. I dealt heroin. I don't know if anybody, I don't know what happened to people who use that heroin. I
again, not to, totally excuse you, and that's not my place anyway, but, uh, uh, people that were going to use those drugs were going to use, someone was going to do what you were going to do
I agree.
if it
I
wasn't you. And I
I
don't
agree.
mean that that's a sort of a cheap, easy way out, but I really, it's just true. It doesn't matter if it's like, it lets you off easy. It doesn't, none of that is material, because the bottom line is, if it wasn't you, it not only would it have been someone else, it would have immediately and without pause been someone else.
Yeah,
These machines are
no
well
doubt.
oiled, and we're all just individuals. And it feels, everything you're up against, because you're you and you're an individual, it feels like the moral apocalypse almost, But, and that is how society works. Every
Yeah,
individual deals with their own moral path and all these things. But this is just true. I mean, if you weren't any of these things, if you weren't dealing for the Zetas, or working for the handlers at on the, with the good guys, whatever you want to call them, it would have just been someone else doing these things,
for sure.
and that there's just no way around that. And I mean, that's actually really one of the interesting things about it too. It almost gets at the randomness that
Yeah,
it was you that did all these things, and it just as easily could have been anybody else.
absolutely.
Uh, that is all just so, so, so crazy though, man.
And again, I because it was me, I end up doing this career, and I help. I mean, I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people in the time that I've done this work, and this was the calling that I was meant to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have experienced this calling if it hadn't been for all of that stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
like,
So what are you doing? Not to get, you don't have to get too specific, but now you are, what is your day to day in terms of the work you do?
so I'm an intensive outpatient treatment counselor. So people go to residential treatment, let's say, they get out. I'm the next level of care down, right?
Okay.
So I counsel people individually and at group level. I these are people, and they don't always go to rehab first. Sometimes I get them straight off the street, but
Okay.
these are people who are still fresh out of their addiction.
Got
So
it.
I help people who are fresh out of their addiction negotiate life. And one of the main things that I do is, my teacher, my Swami, who taught me how to do this work, he had a saying which was hallucinate the change for them until they can see it. And
Huh.
one of the things I do is I try to show them through my behavior and my enthusiasm that recovery doesn't have to be a lodestone that you carry up a hill like Sisyphus. This doesn't have to be a death sentence. This can be a birth.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's what
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting point of view, and one, not only is it one you don't hear very often, but it's one that you don't hear from the mouth of someone like you very often. Let's say,
like.
someone who's been through not only the addiction part, but the actual business dealer side of it, and now on the healing side of it as well, on the very other end. I mean, talk about checking every box in this realm. I can't think of someone that has been involved in so many different sectors of this whole world, really.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm again, this was where I was meant to be, and I'm eternally grateful it happened. The only difference between an obstacle and an opportunity is the context that we choose to hold around it. And we
Mm,
always have the power to choose our own context, no
mhm.
matter the situation. So
Yeah,
that's my life's lesson in that.
I mean, that's a great lesson too. It's also just a beautiful sentiment, shifts perspective on how we see things. I have one more question, if you
Sure.
don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm very curious as to why the you the halfway house you said was harder than even Lompoc. I mean, how is that?
So I'll tell you what, there's a lot of misnomers about prison. Again, like all this stuff, you see it's this certain way.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Now, granted, I was in the low for Lompoc. I wasn't in the penitentiary.
yeah. Okay,
I was with murderers.
yeah.
But by and large, most parts of prison that don't deal with violent offenders, play by the rules and you'll be okay. You know
Uh,
what I mean? And it was very different than what I thought it was. We had plenty. We were right by where rockets launch from Vandenberg Airport, I guess it is.
okay, yeah, 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 yeah. Lompoc, right? Yeah.
So like we could watch these rockets take off and feel them. It's right there.
Entertainment. Yeah.
And there was just a lot of freedom in that you're allowed in prison. You're out in the yard, you're doing stuff. I happened to work on a federal farm every day, so I would leave the prison and go to this industrial farm
Oh
and
wow.
different
Yeah.
cornfields. I get to the halfway house and it's the size of an RV and there's like 30 people in there.
Uh,
And they're from all over. They're also people from state prison. They're also people with violence in their jacket.
yeah.
So it's just a real clusterfuck of disparate personality types. And because you have people who are from county jail and from state prison and people with mental issues, you don't have that sort of um, respect to order
Yeah.
and the sort of follow the rules aspect. It's a little more willy-nilly, and a lot of stuff would pop off because of that.
I have that makes me want to ask one more thing just specifically about that. Why even send people to the halfway house if it's fucking god awful,
Well,
right? Isn't the
first off,
idea that it's like a gateway back into society, like a baby step thing? Isn't that the idea?
look, like most things in the way bureaucracy applies itself to social issues,
Yeah.
best intentions completely
Yeah.
executed wrong.
Yeah.
I think drugs should be completely legal. I think
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
problems.
Yeah,
But in this
absolutely.
case, the idea is to get you back to your area, which is where this halfway house was located. And then you can get a job. So you go to your job, you come back home, or come back to the halfway house. And it's supposed to be sort of an entry, way to get back into society. And if it worked more functionally, that would be a great idea.
Mm.
Uh, but
Yeah.
as it was, I just wanted to get the hell out of there.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, that makes sense. And now you are the hell out of there, so to speak, but you're also the hell out of there in the broader sense. And it
Absolutely.
sounds like a real honestly, at the end of it all, success story and with a happy ending. So I'm very happy to know that. I'm very honored to be able to hear your story and have you tell it to me. And I appreciate your time and your life and your story. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to meet you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool, man. Take care, man. Talk to you soon.